For over 40 years, SCM
has been the voice of our town,
bringing us together through local programming,
education,
and live broadcasts.
SCM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community,
ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings,
and celebrating milestones
like our high school graduations.
But today, SCM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SCM receives less revenue,
even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open,
continues to educate our youth,
and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SCM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
for generations to come.
Visit our website
or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media,
where your town,
your schools,
and your government
come together.
All those who are able, please stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. They moved. All right, so we are going to see alternates, so.
You see both tonight?
Yep, exactly.
Sure.
So both Marcus and Nick will be seated.
Alright.
All right. Bill, you wanna, the minutes?
Yep. Okay, so referring to the planning commission minutes of the meeting on November 12th. Does anyone have any comments to page 1, lines 1 through 46?
I did not see anything.
Page 2, 47 through 91. Page 3, lines 92 through 113. Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
I second that motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Right, so tonight we're gonna hear, we're here on general commission business. The Board of Selectmen has sent us a referral regarding a property to purchase next to the high school. So George, do you wanna give us a little?
just let me just hit you with hit you with facts and the maps and stuff, just remind you why we do this. So Mark is, I will let the town manager who is with us tonight to talk about the request and what the board and the school board are considering and why they're considering. So I'll let him kind of walk you through that. But again, this is property, it's a 2.6 acre parcel with a structure, I don't know the structure, 3,000 square feet?
4,400.
4,400 at 2 Farms Village. It is highlighted in blue here, so it is immediately adjacent to the high school property on Farms Village. The zoning map shows it as professional office, which is we don't have a lot of professional office in town, but it is currently zoned professional office. You've got the high school is zoned RR40. Then again, there's a structure there today. And then just as a reminder, the 824 referral process is driven by the general statutes, and what it says is, let's highlight these differently depending on the request, but essentially says that the Board of Selectmen or no municipal agency shall acquire land for a school or any other municipal use until that proposal to take action has been referred to you as the planning commission for a report. Now, the language of the Connecticut General Statute just says for a report. There's not a lot of guidance beyond that, but we usually interpret that to mean, a finding of consistency with your POCD. So with that, I'll let Mark kind of walk you through what the real ask is.
Yep, thanks, George, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for meeting and taking this up tonight. As George indicated, this is a proposal that is undergoing, a pretty hefty amount of due diligence on both the municipal side and on the board side. And over the last couple of months, we've been looking at, along with our colleagues on the education side, the opportunity to build out special education programming in the town. This is obviously a little outside your purview, but I want to give you a little background so you can get the flavor of what this is all about. Obviously, as George pointed out, the property is unique in that it's positioned immediately adjacent to the high school. So that part of this becomes a no-brainer. As many of you know, probably all know, currently at the school, we're using modulars for special ed classes. This is not an ideal situation at the best of times. It's been going on for a number of years. Those modulars are reaching the end of their useful life. And when you add to that, the 3 or 4 big bullet points here that triggered our review of this a few months ago, rising special education costs, not just in the form of tuition, but also in the form of transportation, because as you know, the state of Connecticut requires us to foot the bill on all of those expenses. And very quickly, again, just for background, these rising costs they make up a significant part of the risk to our budget over the coming years. We see those costs continuing to increase. So the superintendent, who I'm here representing tonight, and his team has been looking at opportunities to build out our ability to meet our obligations and requirements in this area. And this property has been on the market for quite a while. The town actually looked at this at some point a couple years back, a year or so ago. And at that point, I think the sense was, it was before I became town manager, that the return on investment wasn't quite there. Since that time, the costs in the space have almost doubled. And the risks are now imminent, especially because the town has got limited grand list growth. Last year it was 0.06 new grand list growth impacting our tax base, and this year we expect to see, our preliminary numbers are anyway, a decrease in assessed value that's having a pretty negative impact on our tax base and revenues, right? So on to why we're here tonight. Part of the due diligence is to check all the boxes in terms of what we need to do. Come before your board, ask for a report / recommendation, as George briefed you on. I want to be clear that we do not have a deal yet in place on this. It's not a certainty that this is going to happen. This is really just my staff and our team and the Board of Ed checking the boxes and doing their due diligence. When I brought this to the Board of Selectmen, they wanted to make sure that we addressed all of the requirements before we come back to them with a recommendation. And obviously you are thinking of this, and as George said, whether it meets and is in keeping with the POCD is certainly something we want to hear from you after you've taken it up. But mainly I'm here to answer any questions you have. Obviously it's an important ask from the Board of Selectmen and from my perspective, because we've got, my duty under the charter is to get a budget to the Board of Selectmen in early February. And so obviously if this is going to move forward and the Board of Selectmen act favorably, it then goes to the Board of Finance and we have to start figuring out how we're funding it and so forth. So it's a good time for us to come and get you involved. And the other thing I'll just say is, we didn't want to come to you at the 11th hour in case you had questions or you wanted to table it, think about it or whatever. We didn't want to, over the years in my career, I think one of the complaints I've heard from boards and commissions more frequently than any other is, why are you bringing it to us at the last minute type of thing. So I did have a conversation with the first selectman and indicated my strong preference to get this to you now, even though we're not quite there yet. So with that, Chair, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight to
No problem.
for questions, appreciate it. So, does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Yeah, I have a couple. More generalities than anything else. So I looked at the little narrative that was supplied to us.
Yep.
And there's talk about a change in enrollment for the students that need these types of services. What type of change are we seeing? I'm assuming it's an increase.
It is, and it's coupled with a relative flattening of non-special education enrollment. In other words, your global enrollment is starting to flatten. It's certainly not increasing, but at the same time, you're seeing. I would characterize them as slight increases on the special ed side, but I think keep in mind that that's a very expensive proposition. So the addition of 5 or 6 students can drive a huge number to the bottom line of our expense side on the budget. So I think that I think everybody can agree that we're gonna see rising costs. I can't assure you that you're gonna see rising numbers of enrolled students requiring this additional support. I think and I try my best to speak for our superintendent on this. I think that where we are today as a town is we are transporting a number of our students and residents outside of the town, paying tuition to the districts that are providing those special services and supporting the special needs. And the transportation costs alone are significant. So to the extent that if this project were to come to fruition, the idea is to bring back our own as phase 1 of this. And again, the programming isn't really my area. I'm more into the finances and the mechanics, but as I understand it, that would be the first step. Whereupon moving forward, the idea is that we could then model our process after, say, Glastonbury or one of these other towns that is itself a host to outside their district students. And then it could conceivably become revenue positive for the town. And I'm always careful in describing this to not emphasize the revenue positive. This is really a cost mitigation strategy, not a revenue making strategy. But if you look around the state, I've learned over the last couple of months that certain districts have done quite well taking the bull by the horns. And I think I made a comment recently when asked about this that I think one of the electeds may have said, what's the biggest driver of this? And I think for me it was the alternative is doing nothing. And so, if you look at it that way, it's okay, if you don't do something like this, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna wait for the state of Connecticut to fully fund the mandates? And that gets above my pay grade, but I don't think that we can afford to do nothing is really where we are. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it sure does. Over the past few years, this commission has been involved with a number of applications for large apartment complexes. And one of the questions we always ask of the applicants is, what's the impact on the student enrollment?
Sure.
And I think generally we were concerned about all students. How many students will X amount of apartments bring? Is there any evidence that there is a higher increase in students with special needs from these newer apartments?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm pretty definitive that the answer is no, at least to the extent that I'm knowledgeable on this. I have not seen any professional study, academic study, or any consultant piece of work, and George, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've seen something. I know that there's studies on both sides of the issues about driving increases in enrollment generally, but your question is specific to special ed needs, and I've not seen anything about that. I couldn't imagine how you could necessarily know that with any certainty anyway. What you could do is you could say of a population of, say, 10,000 kids between X and Y age, how many generally require supportive and or special education support, those numbers would probably be available. I think your board wrestles with this issue quite well, actually. I've seen some of the discussions and I commend you on taking up that issue. I used to deal with it with respect to tax abatement requests in my former life. If you give a builder an abatement and they come build, well, what's the impact on your school district and so forth against the backdrop of having given them a tax abatement? So I have some familiarity with the yin and yang of this, and there is a pivoting point or a critical mass where if you don't incent the development, you're not getting it. And if you incent too much of it, you've gone too far. And it's very challenging, I think, for us to know for sure where, and that's why we rely on boards like yours to make those tough calls.
George, you know if the Board of Education has done any analysis on the apartment complexes?
Yeah.
And what's the result
So
for student enrollment?
Student enrollment, in fact, the Neil Sullivan at the school board maintains, up to the minute enrollment figures by apartment complex and by location and by neighborhood. In fact, the apartments that we have seen come to Simsbury in the last 10 to 15 years generate less students on average than apartment complexes nationwide. I think the average is about 0.15, 0.17 students per unit. In Simsbury, we generate about 0.12 students per unit, which is really quite low. I mean, 1/10. So, and that data is up to date. Neil releases it every year in a budget discussion with the school board, and I think Mark and his folks have access to that. And I think they post it online. And again, Aspen Green, this many students. The Hartford North property has this many, so they have up to date records on all that, which is it's a great analysis, and great data to have.
Yeah, maybe we should bring that up the next meeting.
Sure.
Compare it to what the applicants have presented to us. I don't remember the numbers offhand. We ask every applicant.
I think they.
Yeah, so
I think
that's
it's higher.
I can answer it just anecdotally from the Hartford South application. So again, the estimate that Neil Sullivan and the folks at the school board estimated, I think was like 100. We would generate whatever the number was at that time. The total number of units is 425 units or whatever the number was. They estimated about 115 to 130 students. The applicant estimated 100 to 115. So there was a little bit of freeboard there, but ballpark. So that's an example. So we could certainly go back and take a look at
To
that.
make sure that, we're not not being given erroneous data.
No, so when we get an application, for a significant application now, we are always now asking for, and the zoning commission is demanding, a fiscal impact study and a school impact study. When I get that, that goes to the town manager's office, it goes to the finance department, it goes upstairs to the Board of Education for them to review and comment. So one of the issues at Hartford South is we did have a little bit of disagreement on student generation and cost associated with that. So that is how we do that check and balance.
But they ended up being pretty accurate.
Yeah, close.
They
Yes.
were close, yeah.
Yes.
So there wasn't significant, yeah.
Yeah, again, for the Hartford North site, less than anticipated
Right.
total number of students.
Correct.
Mark, in terms of the buildings there, do we anticipate using the buildings more or less as is, or are they gonna need a lot of rehab or
Great question. So
conversion?
we're gonna try to mitigate the cost on the retrofit or the rehab in phases. I think our engineering has a number on it of about 800,000, give or take. Some wiggle room there. We're still wrestling with some of that due diligence. You need an elevator in there, ADA, sprinklers. You got a long punch list of things that need to be done. As part of the negotiations with the current property owner, we're looking at potentially having them do some before we close, which could also increase the savings to the town. That those talks are underway. But the good news is that and I've been in the building a couple of times, the current structure of the building lends itself almost perfectly to phase one. If you keep it all on the main floor and don't need the basement or the second floor, you could get rolling without that elevator. You can get rolling, at least bring our own kids back and start the programming. So I think they've got a good plan in terms of a phased approach. At the end of the day, it may not really impact the funding because, what we've learned ever since COVID is that you delay something that you wanna, spend money on for a year or so and put it off. By the time you get to it, the cost is 20% higher. So there's that as well, and we're having those discussions with Tom Roy and others on the team, and some outside experts as well. But it's under $1 million, but we know that.
And I remember reading, but I can't remember, this would start with school year 25-26 or 26-27?
I don't quote me on this, but I think we're going to 26.
Okay.
We started these discussions in September, and I think, it's
26?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
We don't wanna trip over ourselves on this. I think when we started it, there was some idea that we could get out of the gate faster, and we realized there was a lot more to this than met the eye, so I think we're 26. Is that right, George?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Mark, I'm looking at the map, this is the entire parcel is contiguous to the high school property.
Yeah.
And it goes back quite a ways. Is there any other benefits or considerations for use of the property itself besides the structure?
Yeah, they're looking at the interconnectivity to the school property itself, paths, clearing, some parking issues. I think that those discussions will probably be put on the back burner until we get approval. We're at the tipping point too in terms of having spent a fair amount of time on both staffs working this through. So at this point, what we're saying to our approving body is, hey, give us a green light to negotiate, wrap this up and come back to you with a contract. Doesn't mean you gotta approve it, but let me show you the real deal. Give us that green light, and then we'll get to some of those other questions. So obviously, we're gonna do everything we can to maximize the use of that property. It goes way back, as you know. I walked it a couple of times and, there's a picture.
There's a little bit of a constraint, kind of from the notch back. I think there's some floodplain and some wetland back there. So it's not, I don't think it's particularly developable for, maybe ball fields and those kinds of things, but not really structurally. I think that, I don't expect that you'll go back into that northern piece.
I was copied on some discussions, George, you would know more about it than I would about traffic and traffic light or whatever. I wasn't paying that much attention to that at this point, but so there have been some discussions.
I mean, once, and again, to follow our process, just so you know, I mean, once the school establishes, the town establishes what the use is, there's a site plan process.
Yeah.
Through the zoning commission, in terms of access and the rest of the site amenities and build out.
It's a pretty unique opportunity just in terms of its location.
Yeah.
And I think that, we've been charged, in my office with coming up with efficiencies. And one of the things I think in the old days and really pretty recently, you work collaboratively with the Board of Ed. We're trying to really step that game up because just so you know, I'm sure you're aware, 75% of the town's budget is Board of Ed and roughly 25% is the municipal side. My background is in finance, so I want to try to work hand in hand with the superintendent on efficiencies without overstepping into the board side of the budget, which is this invisible wall between them has been there historically. So we're doing really well. I feel good about the interplay between the two sides, and I've advocated with the Board of Selectmen that we're going to have to do more of that as a town. In order to mitigate these tax increases and other risks that we're seeing. So certainly partnering with the board is an important one. It looked to us initially as kind of a no-brainer, and even to the point where if this property didn't work out, we might want to do it elsewhere. So the numbers were good enough to even justify a potential purchase of a property that wasn't contiguous and adjacent to the high school. If that gives you some idea how positive this might be for the town.
It may be inaccurate, but the GIS seems to indicate that this property doesn't have public water or sewer. Do we know if that's the case?
I don't know off the top of my head.
There's certainly public water and sewer at the high school.
There is at the high school,
so.
Yeah, I mean, it just might be.
I think we have to bring it in, that's what.
Yeah, you may have to bring it in, but it's at the street.
Sure.
It's
right,
that's
correct.
It's at the street.
Yep.
And you said that currently we're using like the modular buildings in the back?
Yeah,
Now, are those those like trailers that are like right in the back center?
correct.
Are those, how, and you said they're reaching the end of their life, they've been there for what, like 20 years?
Correct.
Okay. So,
I think it might have been longer, it's been a long time.
when they remodeled the school?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think that was, kind of an ancillary thing, we weren't really looking at that initially. When you fold that in, it becomes just another.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't continue that, and you're not gonna put good money after bad on the modular, so you're looking at a replacement that's probably over $1 million. It's not sustainable, and I think we could do better, and I think the superintendent thinks we can do better.
Because they are just trailers. I remember them, because they were classrooms when they originally had them. Yeah, so if that's what they're using them for now,
Yeah.
they're not great.
No.
Okay.
I appreciate that question.
When you say
Pre-planned.
bring the students back, so the
Bring them home.
modular units are not actually serving all our students anyway, because we still have to transport them, right?
That is correct, and my understanding, I'm not an expert on this again, but my understanding is based on the need and the what exactly they need in terms of the special support. They go to different places and different programs, so that's correct.
I mean, part of that may be staffing as much as it is space, right? I mean, just bringing them back won't, we'll have to consider what staffing change might need to happen as well, right?
Yeah, and that is a very good point, because the one of the challenges may be in building out that staffing level in a very competitive market where special ed teachers are expensive and difficult to retain, recruit. I know that that's primarily where my colleagues on the third floor are working. And they did, I think I saw an analysis on this that said most of phase one could be accomplished with staff that we have. And again, another impact of phasing it, but at some point you're building out a program and then you're hiring some staff and you've gotta work that out. You need another administrator and so forth. And so there is this impact on the expense side of the school budget that is negative initially. And the question is, where does that turn and become positive, and then how many years is it before you're breaking even, and where does it go from there? That's been the work largely that we've done at the finance team here, and some of that analysis has been floating around for about a month now. It looks pretty good. Certainly gonna take a little bit of an impact in year one, but by year three you start to see it leveling out, and the impact is exponential after that, especially as the costs continue to rise elsewhere. Right. So.
We're just approving to start the phase one of the introductory phase of the
Well, I think,
school.
and I'll defer to George on that, but I think that the ask is for you to have an issue of favorable recommendation, and George could give you language on a motion that would be helpful.
Yeah, usually, so Marcus, what we usually try to suggest is that is there policy support in your POCD for whatever the ask is? So this ask is clearly about community facilities, and so the staff tries to go through the POCD, and so we made a recommendation that the request is consistent, the parcel acquisition and renovation is consistent, because the POCD says that we seek to provide community facilities to meet community needs and desires as effectively and efficiently as possible. That's in the POCD goals 11 and 11.1, 11.2, that's in your community facilities section. So that's really what you're doing. You're not approving the town to, I mean, you're making a finding that the acquisition and renovation is consistent with the POCD. That's what you're doing. And I do have a draft motion. It's in front of you, but I also put it on the screen as well.
Any other questions? I was going to move to make a
good,
positive
okay, I just wanted to,
referral.
is there any other questions? Concerns? Okay, go ahead, sorry, Ellen.
I move that the planning commission forward a positive 8-24 report and referral to the Board of Selectmen based upon a finding that the potential acquisition of 2 Farms Village Road for use by the Simsbury School District is consistent with the plan of conservation and development, which seeks to provide community facilities to meet the community needs and desires as effectively and efficiently as possible.
I'll second.
Any discussion, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of a positive 824 referral to the Board of Selectmen, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you again for being here. It was helpful.
Thanks for all your work. Appreciate it.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Yeah.
I've taken the batteries out of the scale at home, so before the cameras get turned off, just wanna advise the public to try that stunt. Don't take them out of your smoke detector, but you can take them out of your scale and your batteries. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have no other business. It is Thanksgiving week and
Slow.
no, not slow. It's no reason to linger.
I agree. There's cooking to do. All right, so without objection, I'll adjourn the meeting.